Welcome back to the Healthy Workplace, the podcast where we dive into workplace culture, leadership, and employee well-being. I'm your host, Dr. Williams, and today I am honored to welcome not just an expert, but a dear friend, someone whose leadership insights are transforming the way organizations thrive. Dr. Yarala is a distinguished leader in the field, and her expertise is shaping how businesses cultivate strong, effective leadership. I couldn't be more excited to have her here with us today. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Johanna Yarala. Dr. Yarala, welcome.
Well, thank you, Larry. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you.
So yes, my name is Joanna and I am in the field of industrial and organizational psychology. My passion lies within leadership development, understanding what makes great leaders and how they can inspire their teams and drive teams within the workplace. I want to say my interest started very early. I don't want to age myself, but I have been working since I was 16. I remember working with a diverse group of managers, and throughout the years, I've noticed that they carry technical skills. However, they struggle with connecting with their teams, communication. And in turn, they saw a or experience turnover, frustration, lack of communication. So this created a curiosity within me on how great leaders create that environment where people thrive. And the question has guided my career and my research and what now is my practice and leading teams and helping leaders lead teams as well. And on a personal level, family is incredibly important to me. One of my life motto is, life is a gift. I'm very thankful to God that we wake up every day, breathe every day, and and we get to share life with family and friends. And I'm very fond of creating connections with others, and happy that you and I are friends as well and get to do life together and talk about all these wonderful topics in the workplace as well.
Right, right. So for those that don't know, me and Dr. Yarala, we started the doctoral process together. And I think we first met in residency and we were in these groups. So it was me, you, Dr. Wade, Dr. Rodriguez, and Dr. Ming. We all were in this group and we all just connected at residency training at the university. And, then we started, our WhatsApp group. So, but like,
Famous
we,
WhatsApp group.
Right. Our famous WhatsApp group. And, we always stayed connected through it that way. Then we did residency training again. And over the years, we just became friends with one another. And one of the things that I tell some of the students now in the doctoral process is make sure that you connect with someone there because, those connections can lead you to opportunities, especially in our field of organizational psychology. And so, but ever since then, we had the same chair too, Dr. Dan. Dr.
Yes.
Dan chaired us both. And he was,
Famous Dr. Dan.
yes, famous Dr. Dan. He's a great professor, one of my favorite professors. Taught me a lot, especially about statistics and working on my chapter 4 with the data. He pretty much, schooled me on how to do it. And now, I'm at a point where I can help other students as well. So, with that being said, Dr. Yarala, we're going to start with, let's see, some leadership questions. So, in your opinion, how do you define leadership in the workplace?
So leadership has many definitions, but it's basically the ability to guide and influence others towards one common goal. It's not necessarily about titles. A leader could be one of your peers, motivating other coworkers. A lot of people think, well, I can't be a leader just because I don't have the title of leader. If you're within a group environment and a team and you're motivating, that is you being a leader without having that title. And it's just basically having leadership in action,
Okay, great.
motivating others.
So, in your work in your career, have you ever came across a good leader? And what qualities did they have that made them stand out to you, someone that you wanted to follow?
I have come across very great leaders, actually. Their sense of empathy, their sense of wanting to help, their sense of caring, not only about the work itself, but about the team, about the people, that just created an environment of trust. It basically helped us do our work more effectively, knowing that we had that backup of a leader and helping us grow.
Okay.
And that has been my experience overall with great leadership.
Okay, great, great. So I read some leadership books, and there's an argument if can leaders be taught, or is it something that they have within themselves? What do you think? Do you think leadership can be taught, or is it something that someone has within themselves to be a great leader?
So it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Not just only based on research and things that I have read, but it's something within you that can make you a great leader. But also, I do believe that it's a trait that can be developed. Like, for example, decision making, communication skills. Somebody might not have the great communication skills, but have all the disposition to communicate and come up with decisions and come up with process improvements. So if they don't have that skill, that could definitely be taught. But it's something that would also have to come within you of wanting to lead. There's people that they don't want to lead. They want to step back and, okay, tell me
Exactly.
what to do.
Right, right.
That's what I believe that.
Right, right. So, like, I read some of these military history books about leadership,
Mhm.
and the author was explaining that there are times when someone who isn't a leader becomes a leader based on the experiences that happen to them. Like this, like during World War II, where some of the soldiers, they lost their leader and they were the next in command, like the next one to lead. And so those experiences put them in a situation to lead. Like they never had any leadership qualities or anything, but because now the other people depended on them, they had to lead. So they were kind of like put in a situation, not want to say forced, but they had to lead their troops in the war. And so, and I agree with what you said. Like there are some people who do not want to lead. They, like you said, they just want to sit back, relax, just tell me what to do and everything like that. And I don't necessarily think that's wrong or anything like that, because someone who leads or wants to lead, they're going to step up and they're
Right.
going to want to take on that extra role or that responsibility, which some people don't want. They don't want that extra responsibility of leading. They are comfortable with where they are. And so, however, with that being said, we're going to talk about, based on leadership, what role does emotional intelligence play in leadership, effective leadership, do you think?
That's a very great question. Emotional intelligence plays a crucial role because it helps you navigate through relationships within the workplace. It can help regulate emotions and pick on what is going on aside from just the workload. If someone is struggling during doing the same work that they have been doing on a continuous basis, and they're struggling, and here's the leader questioning, why is this person struggling? That's when it's key to have that knowledge of emotional intelligence that a lot of people honestly do take for granted, but it's so important in the workplace because you're able to depict, okay, there is something wrong with what's going on, why this person is not able to complete their task that they have been doing for years, for example. So
Right.
it is a very crucial factor in the
Right,
work.
right. And because we're talking about emotional intelligence, which one of our professors does that? Is that Dr. Mendelsohn?
Mendelssohn,
Dr.
yeah.
Mendelsohn. So, we're on the topic of emotional intelligence. He's a big proponent of emotional intelligence. And I got this book the other day. It's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and I started reading it. It's a great book. And I remember when Dr. Mendelsohn started telling me about emotional intelligence, and I really didn't care too much about it. I was like, that really doesn't interest me. However, when I started going through the doctoral process and working and reading more research and writing articles, it became clear to me that it is very important to have within yourself, because different people react to the same situation very differently. Like one thing might happen to someone and they are completely calm about it. They don't react to it. Their emotional emotions are pretty much, in check with themselves. And then there's other individuals where that same situation may happen and they lose it. And that you can see this a lot when people are getting into discussions and arguments, and one person is completely calm and the other person is just letting loose. And so when I started seeing that and I started reading more research on it, I was like, okay, I understand now. Emotional intelligence is very important, especially in the workforce.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that because when the whole topic of emotional intelligence came about within the program, I didn't pay much attention to it, even though I practiced it in the workplace, not knowing there's an exact name for it. But I was very not cautious, but aware of what was happening with people or, within our team or things like of that sort. And then the topic of emotional intelligence came about. And it's funny because whenever I see emotional intelligence, I see Dr. Mental on the
Right.
side of my but yeah, it's very important and crucial to have that factor and you know keep that in mind and be aware of it within the workplace.
Right. Right. And especially like with leaders, I feel need to have, high emotional intelligence because, especially if you're at the top in your career or you're the leader of 110 thousands of people, you got to have some type of emotional intelligence to be able to lead because you cannot react a certain way when things don't go hand in hand with you. Things happen in the workplace, things happen in their lives. And if you are, just letting loose in the workplace without your emotions being in check, it's going to look bad to you and to your team and your morale of your teams and everybody else in the workplace as well.
Correct. I agree 100%. And you have to be very intentional too when you're not delegating work, but once a leader understands their team and they understand who works a certain way and with whatever struggle they're going through, it's also important to delegate the work accordingly based on how they perceive their work because of their own emotional intelligence, whatever
Right.
that case may be.
Right, right. And speaking on leadership, what do you think one of the biggest challenges leaders have in the workplace today?
I want to say adapting to change, especially managing hybrid teams, the whole realm of employee engagement, how perhaps this group doesn't get along with the other group, kind of keeping everything under perspective, everything under control, I should say, and having open conversations. But I want to say is the adapting to change. A lot of people also work remote versus the office, and some people might be struggling with, well, I can relate to this team because I am not in the office, or vice versa. So I would say that's one of the biggest leadership challenges.
Okay, great. Because you mentioned teams. So, what strategies do you think leaders can have to build trust within their teams?
Definitely having open conversations, being transparent,
Okay.
having that transparency of things that not sugarcoating issues. I believe that's one of the downfall of teams that leaders can overcome that when they're giving information, is this being sugarcoated or am I providing sugarcoated information?
Right.
Be transparent, be clear, and have set the expectation for your teams.
Okay, great. You talked about adaptability when it comes to leaders, because there are some leaders out there that they do not want to change, no matter how society goes or business strategies and things change in the workforce. So, how should leaders handle that resistance? Should they, like you mentioned, adapt to those changes, or what do you think should happen? When leaders are resistant to change, what strategies can they implement?
I want to say the transparency, consistency, showing genuine concern. Um, that's a big one. A leader who openly acknowledges mistakes. I want to say when they are struggling with changing, showing a process of before and after. If you implement these changes, how are the results going to drive your team? How are the results going to drive the ultimate goal of what it's in question? I know I've been in situations, I've been in rooms where a leader, you make suggestions for
Mhm.
process improvements and you get a no, not at this moment. No, this is how we've been doing it all along. I'm not open to any changes of discussion now. This is what's worked. If it's not broken, why change it? Perhaps that's the mentality. Like if something's not broken, why change it? but perhaps that's how they see it. But bringing in innovation, new ideas for better process improvements, I think, and showing with facts and actions, I think that is a way of perhaps having them have a change of mind.
Okay. Yeah, because both, as we learn and we're organizational psychologists, so I would provide leaders with a like a blueprint that's basically saying, if you don't do this, this is going to happen.
Yes,
If you do this, this is going to happen. And therefore, we put like strategies in place for the leaders to look over. And so, leaders, they're going to change when they see there's a benefit to their change. Something that is going to benefit not only them as a leader, but their organization as well. If leaders are, they're pretty much resistant also when they don't see any difference in that change. Like if they change, nothing's going to happen. There's no benefit to that as well. So, if there's a benefit to it, most leaders they're going to be all over it. Yes, let's implement these strategies because this is going to happen and it's good for our organization.
correct. And one thing that comes to mind is the subject on the survey. Oh, let's
Hmm.
send a survey.
Right.
Let's see where things are at and we could make changes.
Hmm.
Well, you hear all the time that, okay, so a survey was sent out, employees provide their responses, yet
Hmm.
nothing changes. There's no action
Right.
after that. So you need that buy-in
Hmm.
to also explain that, okay, you want to do something about it, send that survey, but there has to be an action where
Right.
employees see a difference, like you mentioned.
Right. Right. So also in the workplace, we have employees that are looking for leadership or they want to be a leader. So if you were a leader of an organization and you saw potential in an employee and they show traits of good leadership, how would you motivate them or give them strategies and help develop them as a future leader in the organization?
Well, career sitting down with an employee from a leader perspective is a great strategy to motivate that employee to want to move forward. Sending them out also to not just having that conversation, but sending them out to training, communication, decision making, as we had mentioned earlier. That would not only provide them with training, but also motivate them. Say, hey, you got this. If there's a team member that is inclined to say, hey, raise their hand and say, hey, I want to do more. I want
Hmm.
to grow within my team. I want to grow within the company. So doing that blueprint, like you mentioned, for a career path,
Right.
it's crucial. It's
Okay.
crucial and it's important
Right.
for that.
And did you do your research on servant leadership?
I did not. And by
Okay.
the way,
Okay.
servant leadership is Dr. Dan.
Right. Right.
I hear servant leadership, I think of Dr. Dan.
Right.
No, my research was on authentic leadership,
Authentic leadership.
um, and job satisfaction. And there's so many different types of leadership
Right.
that what I found through my research is that authentic leadership is that root of all
Hmm.
of all leaderships.
Right.
I mean, it encompasses transparency, empathy, self-awareness, balanced processing, which means that you take in the thought process of others within the team prior
Hmm.
to you making a decision, which is very important. So it's not just what you say goes, you're also taking in consideration. Leading from that perspective, then it kind of roots out to the other types of leaderships.
Okay. Okay. For leaders, because I know I've had some good ones and some bad ones. I'm sure you have as well. So one of the leaders that I had, they were a great leader and they were approachable, but they still maintained authority. So how can a leader balance between being approachable by their employees, but also maintaining authority?
I think the number one is setting the right expectations
Okay.
and clear, not just right, but the clear expectations, and at the same time being supportive.
Uh-huh.
I had a mentor of mine, they led with kindness. They led with kindness and they said They set the clear expectations. They never compromise rules, or they never compromise, let's see, company policy, but they led with trust, empathy, and there was a line that, you know, that, okay, you cannot cross that line. And you also had to respect that, okay, they're they're in charge, they're leading, yet they're doing it with kindness, and they're being open and clear, and the expectations were there from the
Right, right.
beginning.
Yeah. Being open and clear is very important. And I know Dr. Whitaker talks about this topic a lot, like psychological safety in the
Yes.
workplace, where employees, they don't feel if they speak out or they say things, they're not going to be threatened with their job. You know, we create an atmosphere, leaders create this atmosphere where everyone can speak out, everyone can approach to the leader without fear of retaliation. Because a lot of organizations, you know, these toxic organizations, employees are just too afraid because they don't want to get in trouble for speaking out, especially if they see something that's wrong and they don't want to speak out to the leader or anybody because it's just that fear of retaliation, just that workplace culture that keeps them locked in. They go to their desk and they don't bother anybody because they don't want to be say something that might jeopardize their career or their job just from that.
Correct. And that is huge in the workplace. People, I mean, you have to have a good leader. And I have been in the opposite sides. I have been, with leaders that do provide that, clear expectations and that open conversation where you can say, you can say and speak up, without being reprimanded or without having any sorts of, backfire on you. And one important thing is that leader has to also be discreet and not share that information with others. The moment that trust is broken within employee leader relationship, then that's what starts creating the toxic environment. And that's what starts, it's just like ongoing, you know,
Right, right,
like bad telephone type of
right,
broken.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, moving on to like workplace culture and employee engagement. So, how can leaders create a healthy and positive workplace culture?
Aside from putting the expectations and out there and having these clear conversations, implementing more employee engagement where you also give the ability also of the employees of the team to be able to work together. Give them a sense of ownership about their work. So within their scope of work, for example, my recommendation is give them a task where they create it and make it their own. And then they share it with their team. I think that and giving the same opportunity to everyone in the team creates a good work environment, not showing favoritism to a group or to one person versus the other person. I think that's one of the key factors.
Okay. And so we tend to look at some organizations where some employees are overworked. Uh, I know when I worked at the post office, it was like 12 to 16 hours a day at times. And so we get burnt out from doing that. So have you ever been burnt out at your job or in your career? Have you ever experienced burnout?
Burnout, what is that? I'm just kidding.
Oh my God.
Never heard of the term. Yes, of course. I think having, being intentional about projects that are given, to the team, not giving a group, a project at 3 p.m. on a Friday, and okay, this has to be done by Monday. So, making sure like you have a timeline, that leaders provide a reasonable timeline to create projects. I do understand, like sometimes you're working on something and your boss comes and it's like, hey, I need this done, this is an emergency, or this and that. Those things are, you navigate through, you know last minute emergencies or fires, or you're putting a fire here or there. But when it comes to things that you do have control over, giving that sense that, okay, in reality, this project is going to take this amount of time.
Right.
And we as a team are going to work together, and we're going to delegate who does what, and then come together, and we're going to have the expectation that by Wednesday, we're going to have this done. And by
Right.
Thursday, so having that timeline and having, realistic, yeah, timeframes would be the best route to.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things that I talked about when we mentioning burnout is task delegation. Sometimes, when the leader gives a task to, like their manager, to complete a task, the manager, sometimes they wouldn't give it to the employees. They wouldn't delegate it down to the employees because they were the type where they would get it done themselves. And they are taking on so much that they eventually experience burnout as well. And so I read like some articles on high performing employees where these are the employees that meet all the goals. They're high performers. They meet all the sales. They do everything. And
Mhm.
what happens is leaders see that, they like that. Then they tend to give that employee the work
Everything.
instead of giving it to anyone else because they know that that employee will get it done, and versus giving it to someone else, or delegate it down to someone else. And what happens is this high performer, they will experience burnout much faster because the leadership keeps giving them the work instead of just dividing it up between employees based on their strengths and weaknesses. And so what this does is it doesn't develop those other employees because they already getting that trained. They aren't getting that experience. And so it's hard for them to develop their professional career when the leadership is just only giving those tasks to, that high performer because they don't want the, mistakes being made or anything. But that's just part of growth and experience in your career. Leaders, they need to delegate the task down to their employees instead of just focusing on that one employee that they know will get it done because that one employee is going to burn out to the point where they're not going to be productive anymore.
And what I've often seen is that they miss out on the abilities and skills that their other team members have. They miss out on that this other person can bring to the table so many, so many other qualities to get the work done more effectively
Uh-huh.
and or even bring innovation. So I have seen that, unfortunately. And then yes, this coworker, and then what happens too is that everybody's looking at this poor coworker that they're giving all the work to
Right.
as, oh, the favorite,
Right.
the person that gets all the recognition and
Mhm.
whatnot without giving everybody else a chance.
Right. Right. So, and you mentioned that your research was done on job satisfaction, right? Okay. So, how does leadership impact employee retention and job satisfaction?
So going back to the authenticity of leadership,
Hmm.
in order for job satisfaction to take place, per se, you need that transparency, that be transparent with your team. You need to be self-aware of
Hmm.
what's happening, self-aware, and that goes hand in hand with the emotional intelligence that we were discussing earlier, and the balance processing, where you take others from your team, other opinions, other strategies, other innovations from your team prior to you as a leader making a decision for your team. um, Very, very important in order to have also job satisfaction. Sitting down with each individual from your team, and delegate the work, as we had mentioned, in appropriate manner, where everybody gets a chance to not only perhaps lead, or everybody gets a chance to have a part of the recognition as
Right.
well. I want to also say that doing that career path with, sitting down, doing a career path with the employee, because now they know that you care about their growth.
Right.
Everybody, unless there's those individuals that they're comfortable and they've been in one position, they have not shown any interest of moving forward, or they're just happy where they are at. So that employee per se will not be an issue at all because they have already expressed, hey, I'm happy here. But that entails job satisfaction because, hey, I'm here, but I have sat with my leader and I know I'm going through A, B, C, and D, and eventually I am going to be where I want to be in the long run.
Okay. Okay. All right. Bonus question time.
Ooh,
Okay.
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 Drum roll.
Right. Okay. So, if you were standing before all the leaders in the world and you had a chance to tell them one thing about their organization or their employees, what would you tell them regarding that, their organization and their employees?
Oh,
Tell them anything you want.
be authentic.
Be authentic.
Be authentic, because with that keyword, authenticity will drive. Because authenticity encompasses so many things within that one word. Because with that, you're going to be honest with your team. You are going to, once you're honest, you are going to hopefully get that trust that you want from your team. And with those factors, your team can seriously drive, and you can take that goal setting that you have for your team, for a project, for the environment that you want in your organization. I just believe that if you're authentic with and honest with your team, not sugarcoating anything,
Right.
say, hey, this was not done the way it should have been done. How can we be better? And I think a lot of organizations need to have those tough conversations.
Right.
Like, how can we be better? Where can we make changes? Not to reprimand people, but let's make changes for the better.
Okay, great,
That's what
great.
I would tell them.
Okay, thank you. Well, Dr. Yarala, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the Healthy Workplace today. Your insights on leadership and workplace culture has been truly invaluable, not only to our listeners, but to me as well. You're a good friend. Thank you for sharing your expertise, wisdom, and passion with us. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with others who are passionate about creating healthier, more effective workplaces. Until next time, stay motivated, stay inspired, and keep building the healthy workplace. Thank you.